Thank you, and thank you for the organizers for me to have this opportunity to address this, the vulnerable audience here in Latvia. As mentioned, Finpro is an organization which is supporting the Finnish industries. But on top of that, last year, Finpro, which has been the official trade promotion organization of Finland, was merged to Invest in Finland, which was a smaller organization. So we have a new mandate also from last year. And I will talk about those two mandates during this, because both are very relevant when it comes to the economic development of a country like Latvia, for example. Actually, it's not the first time for me to visit Latvia, and I think I've seen some major changes. I was here in 1997 last time, looking for an opportunity to establish electronics manufacturing in Latvia. I was working in the Nokia cluster at that time for Nokia subcontracting company, and we were looking for the expansion in the region. We already had the major operations in Estonia, and I went through Latvia, Lithuania, also Russia at that time, and I saw that there was a very good industrial base in Latvia, and I'll come back to that also in my presentation. First of all, I will touch up a little bit of Finland and its economy today, and then I will have some ideas what needs to be done in Finland, just for a comparison that you will face some of the similar challenges, and then of course some of the specialities probably what are in Latvian economy. And finally, I will go to the topic of Finpro, because I think Finpro is a result of all of these, and that's how we are operating and what are we doing. Before going to the Finnish economy today, I will just go quickly through the Finnish history in a couple of sentences. First of all, Finland was in the, until 1200s, we were no man's land. It was forest and nobody really owned the land. Then the Swedish people came in and took over Finland, and we were part of Sweden probably 600-700 years. And then we were part of Russia for 100 years, and then gained our independence in 1917. So we are almost a 100 years old nation as an independent nation. On the other hand, we have been Finns all the time. So it used to be Swedish-Finnish kingdom. We used to be a separate entity in Russian Empire and so forth. So we always had our own independence from when we look at the people. We had our own language and so forth. So it's one of those key elements which was mentioned already in the previous presentations, what makes a country successful, that you have an identity which you can build your economy and your welfare on. Then a little bit to the industrial history. So Finland was very much an agricultural country until probably early 1900s or late 1800s, when the first paper manufacturing, or pulp manufacturing and forestry industry really kick off in the early part of the 19th century, or 1900s. Then we actually lived on paper and pulp very much on and agriculture until the Second World War. And actually what happens, of course, everybody knows we lost the war, and actually it also had some very good development activities starting that time, because Finland was the only country, to my knowledge still, who paid the full debt on martial debt or war debt to the other parties. And that was done by actually building up machinery, building up goods, and especially goods for Soviet markets. So we actually built up trains, tractors, and so forth, which were giving us as a contribution to this debt. And that's how we build up one of our strong points in our economy, and that's machine building and the industry base as such. The couple of things also which were happening in the 70s, the countryside was losing its, of course, because factories were in the cities, so countryside were losing its attractiveness. So we had a governmental-owned financing instrument called Kara. It was meant for financing the rural area and the small town economies and the businesses over there. That was in the 70s. And in the 80s, we went a little bit further. We had a new instrument called TEKES. It's the funding agency for innovations and technology. And this is, I think, a crucial thing. Even it was mentioned earlier that the funding from government is not something that is probably the best way of increasing innovation. But Finland has always been very low in capital. So capital market has been very slow, and we were actually gaining our wealth in the last 30 years, where we are today. So it's actually, we were not that wealthy nation when we look at like 30 years back. So we needed to have the governmental intervention on this financing of the innovation. Then, of course, what happened in 1990 when Soviet Union broke up, and 25% of Finnish exports went to Soviet Union at that time. Overnight, we lost 25% of markets, foreign markets, and what also happened is that we had almost full employment, but 4 or 5%. We went in a year to 20 to 21% unemployment rate. So it's a huge hit. At the same time, we had the financial crisis. We have created our own financial crisis by opening the financial markets or the companies to foreign debt and loans. So we actually had a huge problem. And we ended up having 2005, 2006, we started to be on the level of 6%, 5% unemployment rate. We went all the way from 1991 to this second or last financial crisis, getting down and going on creating the jobs and the wealth. So that's what we are, and I'm coming back to Nokia later on, but I think Nokia is a good example of the Finnish industrial history as such. They started with the forest industry, then they went to rubber boots, car tires, and home electronics, TV sets and so forth, finally finding the mobile communication, and then one cycle is over, and that is something that we'll talk a little bit later. So today we are really a truly open economy in European context because we are the only Nordic country, first of all, which is part of the Eurozone. So we are totally exposed to almost everything right now. And small economy, 5 million people. So once again, not a huge population. One of the things which is definitely different also from Israel, for example, immigration has been extremely low. So we don't have that much immigrants creating this entrepreneurial character. And Finns, we tend to be also relatively risk-averse, so we are not known for taking the huge risks in businesses. So, of course, that is something that we need to boost, and that's why, once again, the governmental intervention, for example, what comes to the venture capital, having maybe things like sort of unbalanced funds, which or risk-sharing funds and so forth, they are necessary, have been necessary, but of course it's improving from the private sector. So we are very dependent on exports. When the financial crisis hit 2008, basically, our exports dropped 30%. We are very heavily export-driven, so it had a major impact, about 10% impact on the GDP. So it was a huge. And one of the reasons is that we are so dependent on also on investment goods. So this is something that we compared the results with our Swiss colleagues. They said that they had a drop of 10% on their exports because they were making chocolate, medicine or drugs, and they're also making watches, and all those were going as before the crisis. Even, of course, the medical stuff goes a bit higher typically when people need medication in tough times. Basically, they didn't have that kind of drop, but we are very much on investment goods, and that's something that we have to look at a little bit later as well. We have high standard of living. equals high costs. And so we cannot be cost competitive when it comes to manufacturing and so forth. So we have to compete with something else. We are the fastest aging nation, to my understanding, in Western Europe at least. And that, of course, is going to create a huge challenge in the future. Right? It's mathematics. If nothing goes weird in the world, we know how the population is growing and how this also the public sector will expand because of the aging population. We're actually losing people from the workforce, and also we have less people working for the private sector, creating the wealth and paying the well-being of the people. But we also have some good things over there. We are right now ranking typically number 1 or number 3, 2 in the PISA ranking on the education, especially secondary education. Innovative, we are, I think, 6th in the ranking of innovation nations. Then we just last week it was published that the World Economic Forum is saying that Finland is the 3rd competitive nation or in the world. Once again, statistics and these can also be read that, okay, it depends on what you measure, you get the right answer. But right now, of course, we have the possibilities, but do we capitalize it? And this is something that we have to be careful on, that we really use the competencies and knowledge we have, and also the resources right. What are the challenges for economic growth? First of all, as I said, we are in investment goods, and right now our basic markets have been 75% of Finland's export has gone to European area. So it means that the European area hasn't been growing, so there's no demand for the goods. And you have to go to the emerging economies to find the clients for those. Then one thing is that the multinationals, which have been the major contributor to Finnish exports, are not investing anymore in Finland because they invest where the markets are. They invest in China, they invest in India, some even Africa and so forth. So they are not creating the needed private sector jobs anymore, the export-driven private sector jobs in Finland. Even some have been pulling out some of the investments. Also, we already touched up that Israel had the difficulties to have a natural path of internationalization of exports because of the boundary issues. It's the same in Finland. We used to have a Soviet Union boundary or border over there, which wasn't really accessible for SMEs. So it was big companies doing business across the border. We had the Baltic Sea and language barrier also to Sweden to a certain extent. So once again, we didn't have a natural overflow. When you think about the person in Switzerland and the export manager over there, he takes his car, puts the gear on, 2 hours, he has passed 2 country borders, and the language is still the same. So it's completely different. You in Latvia, you have a little bit more better situation because you have anyway the access to Central Europe easier also by the trucks and other traffic means. Then one thing is the SMEs. They have been typically going to Sweden, some to even Russia nowadays, and Germany and so forth. But right now the markets are further away. So the SMEs don't have the exposure. They don't see what happens in the world. They don't see the opportunities. That's even if there's internet, but you cannot really rely on what really the business acumen is or what are really the opportunities and challenges in different places. And finally, in Finland, we have very low foreign direct investment flow coming in compared to our peers. And one of the reasons is Sweden. Very simple. Sweden, Nordic country, basically doubled the economy and size, access on Central Europe better, and also they have the language issue with another Nordic countries. They can speak more or less the same language. So definitely we have to find something we can actually make ourselves different than the peers in neighborhood. So what needs to be done then? First of all, every single, and it was also mentioned earlier today, that you need to sort of build your strategy and your success on your natural competitive advantages. In Finland, I have identified 6 over there. Some of those are very natural. It's first of all, northern location. It has created lots of innovations when it comes to the clean tech. I mean, energy efficiency, first of all. Then we have Arctic knowledge, which is getting more and more important when we have the Arctic route coming more in use, and many other things related to that one. Water, we have 180,000 lakes in Finland, which are very pure right now. They are very maintained, but it took a long time for us to really keep them on. First of all, get them to that stage and also keep them. So once again, environmental issues. We know that water is going to be the most scarce resource, probably clean water in the future. So we have some advantages over there. Forests, I mentioned already that we started pulp and paper. Right now, there's huge potential on what comes to biofuels, recyclable materials, on fiber and so forth, replacing plastics with fiber. We have lots of that information. We're actually one of the leading nations in biodiesel, for example, in the world. Solid bedrock. We are right now ranked as #1 country in Europe when it comes to mining. We have, because it's very old bedrock over there, so we have all these minerals over there, and also the infrastructure is there for allowing all these excavations and the industry to build. But also we have lots of companies which are making machinery and processes for mining, which are world leading in their league right now. Autotech and Metso, for example, they are selling all over the world the mining equipment. But also solid bedrock is something that on the investment side, we just got the second data center to Finland. They're building right now lots of data centers because everything goes to cloud. All the information goes to cloud. And we got the Google a couple of years back. Then we got Yandex, which is the Russian Google. They are right now building one in Finland. And the latest announcement, which is still open, is that Microsoft would probably put a data center to Finland. It's one of the reasons that we have very solid bedrock, so we don't have earthquakes over there. But also we have northern locations, so we have cold climate, so you don't have to cool up the data centers that much. You save energy over there. And also we have lots of water, which is needed for cooling. So it's an ideal location in that sense. And this is, once again, coming from the solid things like bedrock a couple of billion years ago, built in Finland. Okay, then one of those which are not sort of natural, but it's a long Russian border. We Finns have not used that in full extent. And right now, it was actually announced 2 weeks ago that Russia became the second biggest trading partner for Finland after Sweden. Sweden is #1, Russia is #2, and right now Germany dropped to #3. So we start to see also that one coming in. And also investments from Russia coming to, as I said, the Yandex, for example, investments coming from Russia to Finland. That's definitely some, and we can use Finland as a gateway also for other foreign companies to Russia, especially the St. Petersburg area. But then I think the last one, which is really something that it's learned, built over the years, and that's actually the education and the innovation which is allowed by the education. People have a very high education level, as I said earlier, and also and the education system is working fine. But of course, this is something that you either have it or you don't have it, and this is something that I think small nations like us, we need to build anyway, because you cannot trust on a piece of land which has these very nice features like solid bedrock and forests. We cannot trust on those because there are also other countries, much bigger ones, which have those. So you have to be different. Then, as I said, the SMEs need to go further away from the existing market. That's the only way we can sort of grow because, as I said, investment goods happen to be something that when we look at the investments coming to Western Europe, for example, it will take quite a long time to reach up the capacity which was built by 2007, the utilization. So nobody needs new machines, nobody needs new factories, because we are not even close to what some of the countries were building the capacity before the financial crisis. Then, as I said, we have to make the business opportunities known to these SMEs worldwide, getting this information to and tell what is the match between the demand and global demand and the finished supply. Then, even if we need to go to these new markets, my background, as I said, comes from the private sector, and over there is something that when the times are tough, there's a saying, when times are tough, the only thing which you don't want to lose is your existing customers. So that's why we are also heavily relying on also reinforcing our existence from Finpro's side as well in our existing markets, which we believe that is going to be tougher. There are always coming new players in the market, and some people ask me that, do you see any light in the tunnel after the financial crisis? I said, yes, I see the light, and it's not that far away. The problem is that the world we are entering from the tunnel is completely different from competition point of view than when we entered it. We were like world-dominant nation on telecommunications and so forth. Chinese were still like manufacturing location, Indians, back office work. Right now we start to have the innovations and the competition coming from these countries. This is something that many people don't realize, that the world is, within these 5 years, whatever it is, has changed a lot. One thing is that because we need these new jobs in Finland, and I like startups, I like startup nation, I like because I was in venture capital in the early 90s, and I really like it, but when we look at the demand, what we have in Finland right now, 200,000 private sector jobs needed to be created in the foreseeable future. Cannot happen through small startups. It happens with those companies which have maybe 50 people to 250, 300 people having some manufacturing in Finland. If they double their revenue, they probably 80% increase their workforce in Finland. That's what has to happen. And those companies are not ready to take the step and take the manufacturing or the operations abroad. So this is the sweet spot if you want to quickly create the jobs, and that's once again something that we are aiming in Finpro doing. This startup issue is extremely important for us from renewal point, because quite a lot of those new companies, they tend to go to consumer markets, which is very good because that's what we are lacking in Finland. We don't have consumer goods, global consumer goods, except what was mentioned earlier here, Angry Birds. You know, everybody knows. Mobile phones used to be, right now it's Microsoft and so forth, but Angry Birds, it's not only gaming, it's you can buy in stores, you can buy towels, you can buy soft drinks with Angry Birds, you can go to Angry Birds amusement parks and so forth. It's a success story coming from this kind of. But once again, have to remember, this company made 53 or 52 games before hitting the Angry Birds game. It wasn't one night sort of success. There's hard work, different games created, and then one hit the target. And of course, it's the risk-taking and the drive what the company has. I met these people many times, and if somebody has a drive, they do. I have to say this because we Finns are not that talkative. You probably know that most of you, that we are not the most talkative nation. And still we kind of invented mobile phone. Yeah, it's interesting. But the other thing is that we are also not considered to be the best marketeers and salespeople. And this person who's running the marketing and sales in Rovio, or actually Angry Birds, he was interviewed maybe 2 years ago in was it Financial Times or something else, and they asked that how this kind of a success story come from Finland, like Angry Birds. And this Peter Westerpakka said that because we Finns are the best salespeople and marketers in the world. So that's how you change the world. Okay. Then the final points over there is that, first of all, you have to be known for something. And that's, I think, the crucial thing for Finland. That when I lived 9 years actually in Asia, in Hong Kong and Beijing, before joining Finpro, looking at from that angle, this Europe, most people don't know where Europe is. Then you start to say Finland. I mean, what they know is they see Europe, they see Big Ben, they see Eiffel Tower, maybe Colosseum and so forth. But there's very little they can see. Nokia is one thing which made us known. And of course, we have to always capitalize what we are known for. That's because the marketing is the toughest thing. Innovation, creation, yes, can be done. Making products out, yeah, can be done. The most tough thing is to get those products and services out in the market. If somebody has done the marketing job for you, you should use it. The same applies to, for example, education. The PISA ranking is well known in the worldwide scale that Finland has been ranking high. Actually, we have started to create a business out of the education because somebody already did the marketing for us. All we needed to do anymore was to make this as a product. We had the R&D done. Somebody has done the marketing for us. So, but this is something. And one thing also that for more small nations like Finland or Latvia, you cannot be known for many things. So unfortunately, people say that countries or at least the government shouldn't pick up any winners. Unfortunately, that's not the case, because if you want to focus, you have to focus and make you known for something. I keep on saying also that you can always let all the flowers grow, but you don't have to fertilize all of them. Just have to pick which ones you fertilize. Then a little bit about the challenges in Latvia. This is something that it's not really Latvia, but could be whichever nation which has been developing as fast as you have. And is that you start to lose one thing which always is the cost advantage. But do you have the time to prepare yourself for the next tough competition when you don't have the cost advantage anymore? And actually it's not only small nations. I think that China might still face a similar problem. They grew so fast, the cost competitiveness starts to be gone, and they still haven't really got the innovation base. They are putting lots of money in R&D and innovation, but can they come up with the products which are world-class and also taking the market? They have the cash and the time, but is it enough? That's another story. Small domestic market also means that small is global. Yes, that's true, because I think in Finland, the people think global nowadays when they think about, because domestic market cannot make you rich, in principle. That's the point, if you are, especially on the startup scene. Then the other thing is that what we had is that we have SMEs, lots of them in Finland, but how many of those were doing directly the exports and were able to do it? They were actually subcontractors, very high quality products, services, but they were not doing direct, so they didn't have the skills of doing the international business on their own. So right now, when the sort of big driving companies of the different industries, the cluster leaders, are right now having their operations outside Finland, there's very little to do because they don't invest in Finland. So these companies need to be willing and able to go for international business on their own. And the FDI already mentioned that you have to be able to differentiate yourself from the peers. Then going to Finpro, because I think all the countries do things differently, but I'm going to actually tomorrow to Vienna. There's the European Trade Promotion Organization meeting, and I have been asked to sort of say a couple of words. What is an ideal TPO, trade promotion organization? So with one sort of sentence, I would say the ideal one is the one which can adapt and modify itself according to the needs of its own country and also on the world markets. And that's what has happened. Finpro was established in 1919 as an association, and we are still an association. We are not a government organization, we are an association. Still with the similar structure that the Finnish businesses, either individual companies or some industry associations and economic associations are backing us up. But we have changed. We are not doing any more trade shows. We are not taking companies with a trade show. There are other people doing it, and that's not anymore. It might apply to a country which has single commodity supply, peanuts or coal or whatever, where they need to be on the certain trade shows. What we see that Finland is right now a country which has lots of companies with a niche knowledge, understanding of their different businesses, but they have all individual needs. So we can still do trade promotion trips with our ministers and so forth to see that, okay, right now Finland is known for something, but most of the jobs actually we do with the companies is that below number 1,400 individual company assignments. We just ask the company, what are you looking for? Then we evaluate if that what they are searching for is feasible. We challenge them. We are not saying, okay, let's go to China. We say, you're kind of a small company, let's go first to Russia or to Sweden. So we are trying to make them also not to make the wrong decisions as such. We have the mandate to do it, but we also charge for our services. So only 50% of our financing comes from the governmental budget. Most of it, the rest comes actually from the invoicing from the clients. So we are all the time relevant because the companies are willing to pay for our service. So that's the issue, that we used to be free of charge maybe 20 years ago and so forth, but right now it's very much related to the value added we create to the companies. We are operating worldwide. I'll show the map later on. And then we have about 370 professionals all over the world. So what we do is we provide the access to the opportunities. So we identify the opportunities in the markets and bring them known to the companies. We speed up the internationalization. We actually help them to find the clients. This is actually, I think, the big thing in the broad sense that the world has changed so much that we have to take the companies quickly to the value chains. So directly the companies, buyers, distribution channels or whatever, because the time windows, opportunity windows are so narrow nowadays and competition is so tough. And that's something that I think you should take back with you, is understanding the importance of getting quickly to these value chains, understanding what are the value chains nowadays in the world. And then, of course, we do, with our network, we do this actual helping. Even somebody wants to establish a factory somewhere, we are helping them on finding the location and so forth. And one thing is that everything is built on also that we need to have the knowledge of the Finnish supply. So our organization is based on the industry competencies. So we have people who talk the same language with the IT guys, with the clean tech guys, with the ladies in life sciences or digital media and so forth. But we also, as we are doing consulting work, we have also products for different cycles of the internationalization of the company. So we have very specific productized services which we serve to our customers. And most common, for example, is the partner search. People look for distribution channels, clients, suppliers, R&D partners, even financiers nowadays. People are looking for, can you find us a financier for our project in Indonesia, for example. But as I said, this is something that we have learned over the years, that this is the way we can create the highest value and contribution to the companies. But we also are sort of part of this focus thing that Finland has selected few areas already where we have special programs what comes to the internationalization. And Cleantech Finland is definitely the most visible. We are right now promoting Finnish in the cleantech industry. It comes to energy, environment, and so forth. And there's a specific program for that. Finland Care is promoting Finnish healthcare system and the providers over there. First to Russia, but right now also to Middle East and so forth, because we have a very good healthcare system and there's something to really to sell. Future in Finland, I already mentioned that the education system we have is very good. So right now we are, for example, taking the teacher education programs to different parts of the world and so forth. It's a it's not, once again, creating lots of employment in Finland, but it actually raises up that we are known for something. That's the key over here. Luovimo is actually creative industries program. We are getting creative industries as international business. A little bit about foreign direct investments. I think these are very natural statements over there that it creates more competition, it brings new competencies and so forth. But I think the last, once again, going back to this last step over there, bring the global business networks and competencies. And this is for the SMEs especially. If we can get a major company locating their R&D or manufacturing in a particular country, even sales office sometimes, they actually open up the doors for the local companies really to access this marketing or global business networks. And people, I mean, I promise to come back to the Nokia case because, as everybody knows, Nokia mobile phones part was sold to Microsoft. People said, is it good or bad? I said, yes. It depends on. From my point of view, it's a good thing because right now the mobile phone business in Nokia didn't do that well, and somebody was willing to pay 5.4 billion euros for it. That's fine, because right now we have a 5.4 billion euro investment on Finnish expertise and competence. And there are not too many that kind of cases, I can say. Right now we are known for something and somebody was willing to pay for it. And also that allows right now the Finnish companies to look, and once again, what are the possibilities through Microsoft to get my business growing international. So once again, I'm not one of those who worry and cry. I say that yes, it probably had to be done and it's fine. I skip a little bit on the what the Invest in Finland. We are actually just promoting Finland as location, but we are doing consulting work for the foreign companies to establish themselves in Finland. But once again, focus, focus, focus. We have certain areas where we have decided to go and sell Finland. One of those, for example, as I mentioned the data centers. We have a very solid story to tell and a couple of good success stories over there, and success creates success. Of course, ICT, which was mentioned already. Wind energy, we have a big country and quite windy. It's not the best windy place, but still we have quite a lot of place over there. We're looking for that kind of investment. Tourism, because we have the northern location, we have lakes, we have the forest. It's definitely something to look after. And this is the second last slide I'm going to show you is the global network of Finpro. So we are all over the place. The last couple of years we have been expanding, even if our financing hasn't really increased, it's actually come a little bit down on the government side, we've still been increasing our existence in what I say, strategic areas. First of all, Africa, a couple of new offices over there. Peru, Indonesia opened just recently. But also we opened last year an office in Sweden and also in Norway. So, as I said, you have to protect your own market because the competition is getting tough. And we have ignored that for some time because of the going to the Europe and going to Americas and so forth. But basically, this is something that we have done recently. I'll just have these different country maps over here. And finally, something which wasn't done by Finpro alone, it was done by Finnish government about 2 years ago. They started to think that how these small resources of Finland, foreign ministry is represented here by the embassy here, We have the Finpro around the world. We have Tekes in Finland, Finvera financing in Finland. How can we have all these different actors to be more efficient in global terms? And they created the program called Team Finland, or it's actually nowadays an active way of doing cooperation. The easiest thing to describe is that the ambassador in Latvia is actually calling off a meeting with the actors which are located here, and they create the plan for next year. What do they do together? What are the focus areas of Finnish industry? It's not anything political, it's purely economic issues. And this Team Finland you will probably see once in a while. I think when President Niinistö was here, I think Team Finland probably, hopefully was mentioned over there as well. But this is something that it's like an umbrella brand for Finland to expose to the economic world of today. So with these words, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I think we are ready for questions.
Kari Heirinens, and just continue your thought about that you're quite cold enough in order to have such as a data centers. You're not in need to freeze and drinks, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. And just very simple questions regarding the Finpro. Actually, you are the service provider, isn't it? Yeah. The question that came from the audience is actually consists of the two parts. What would you name as the most valuable service of Finpro used by the Finnish companies? The valuable one.
The most valuable is definitely finding a business partner and creating quite quick sales for the Finnish companies. Going to the values networks, finding the value networks for the companies.
Okay. And the second part is, which is the most popular service used by the Finnish companies?
Partner search.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's very much exactly the same.
Okay. Then the question comes about the dependence of Finnish economy on so-called Nokia factor. Actually, it's now became as a part of the Microsoft, still having the same brand. What would be a substitute or just a replacement of Nokia for exports, innovations in the nearest future?
Actually, there has been always the discussion, what is the next Nokia? What is the next, when last 10 years we've been talking about what is the next Nokia. Everybody more or less keeps on saying there will be no next Nokia. Because once again, it's probably once in a lifetime thing that this kind of happens, or maybe once in generation, whatever. But basically, I think clean tech is something that we have, first of all, the competencies, we have the companies, and also there's a huge growing demand on the market. So that is probably the one which is providing, because clean tech can be very efficient business, manufacturing processes. So it creates manufacturing jobs and so forth. But also it can be consulting and so forth. It's definitely an area we are focusing on.
Mm-hmm. Just turning back to your speech, you mentioned the light at the end of the tunnel. Do you know the date?
It's 19th of September 2014.
That's a good promise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kari Heirinens no Finpro. Aplausos vēlreiz. Thank you once again.